Okay, so as I was mentioning before, I think we all through the day have heard of what the challenge is today and how we are looking at. I mean, we just need to open any news media outlet to understand that there are like thousands of climate catastrophes around there. And we already know that we stand in a very precarious position by we're failing to get to the desired goal, and we have this elephant in the room where we know that the built environment is responsible for a great deal of emissions, and specifically 15% of these emissions are embodied in 4 main materials used both in buildings and infrastructure: cement, iron, steel, aluminum. We also talked about this before, how in the last 70 years, through this process of the great acceleration, we have shifted our material flows from biomass-based to metals and mineral-based. And so not only exacerbated the consumption, but also changing where these materials are coming from. And even Anton mentioned this, the weight in the Anthropocene, where the amount of living biomass has been surpassed by the amount of anthropogenic mass. So basically everything that we've produced, and as you can see here, most of it is concrete. And perhaps to me, the origins to this anthropogenic dominated world is our own human-centered perception. Because this is not only, as we can see, Vitruvio or the Modulor, we are projecting our kind of measures onto the world that we build, but also we project our own perception of time. And having already spoken a little bit about time, I would like you to follow me very shortly through this very quick explained timeline, where if I tell you that the oldest person, well, she was the oldest person alive, she passed 2 months ago in the US, 117 years old she had. And then we look at her next to the oldest skyscraper in the US, built with granite, steel, fire bricks, only 40 years older than her. We look at them and we say, wow, that's pretty old, no? Like, we should kind of keep buildings at least this long. But then, as it was also mentioned before, we look back and we see, no, actually there are older buildings and built with timber. And if we look back, we also find stone and earth-based buildings from 4,000 years ago to almost 11,000 years ago, but also there are living creatures that are still standing that are over 4,000 years ago. So this might start changing our perception of time. And if we move a bit backwards, then we realize that our built environment is just a piece of our history within the time that Homo sapiens have been inhabiting the world. And even Homo sapiens is nothing compared to all the time that first humans lived here. And the human's existence is minuscule when we look at it in the grand scheme of things, understanding when the materials that we are currently using were actually created by the Earth. And as also was mentioned before, the formation of the oceanic lithosphere or fossil fuels or all these sedimentary rocks that we use in mostly cement took 500 million years to form. So if I ask you again, is this building old? How long do you think it will take to replenish the materials used here? Well, at least 500 million years, but also the granite, it will take 4,000. So what we're doing here is that we are tapping into slow carbon cycles, and these carbon cycles take too long for us to even grasp how long that is. We're talking about steel, concrete, or plastics that, yes, of course, we treat them as long and durable materials, but actually the life expectancy of these materials in our current built environment is very low. And the potential for recycling is very limited because of their energy-intensive process. And to this I add clay as a separate point because, as we have also mentioned before, as long as it's not fired and it's uncontaminated, the potential for reuse is practically infinite. So again, when we look at these things and they say, okay, these are durable materials, this is why we have been shifting towards this use. But then we look at this, that is, for example, a demolition rate in Denmark of 1%. And this is actually how long we're keeping our buildings standing. And when we look at this and we see that housing is the kind of like the oldest one here, and we see 120 years, then it suddenly sounds very similar to the first image I was showing you, 117 years old. Why? Because we build for ourselves based on our human perception, and we base for our needs, and our needs change, and we need to, our built environment needs to evolve with ourselves, and that might not change, but we are able to change the way we build. So if we shift our look into fast carbon cycles, and what we were mentioning before, this bio-based carbon cycles, and we look into wood, bamboo, and grasses, and many others that have been mentioned here before, we see here that the growth time is actually smaller than the life expectancy within the built environment. And through changing to these bio-based materials, we can effectively sequester the carbon. So this is our vision at Bauhaus Earth. So from, as I was mentioning before, founded by John Schellhuber, it obviously resonates to you through this kind of staatliches historic Bauhaus School of Design, where practitioners, teachers, students of various disciplines came together, and they were bringing these radical methodologies of thinking through making, and they were exploring how to bring design to manufacturing in the post-war, post-First World War. So, of course, we take this radical approach, but we now commit ourselves to also address the kind of negative legacy that came out of this historic Bauhaus, which is modernism. So how we move forward. We know that the future is urban. We know that the global building is expected to double by 2060. So this is not necessarily happening in the Nordics or in Europe, but mostly in the global south. But we want to strive to build from business as usual to regeneration and move from linearity to circularity, and ultimately to transform the built environment from a carbon emitter to a carbon storage. Our approach is based on these fields of action that we address in a multi-scalar process. So I'm going to very quickly just walk you through 4 of our projects that address in different constellations these fields of action. 2 of these projects I am deeply involved in, and the other 2 are from other teams from our organization. So Mass is More was one of our first projects in October 2022. We had the opportunity to work with IAC and with the Mies van der Rohe Foundation, where we collaborated in this temporary intervention of a timber pavilion in the premises of the Mies van der Rohe Pavilion. And we kind of address this from the perspective or the question of what would be the climate impact of building the Barcelona pavilion anew as it was designed versus building it again with local timber. So of course the actual pavilion that was built was just a provocation, but we had a whole exhibition around it trying to answer this question. And to this we run like an LCA analysis where we broke down both pavilions in different elements that could be comparable, and we tracked the emissions but also the kilometers that these elements or the materials used in these elements had to travel to get to the place. And then we kind of made this comparison, and of course we realized that the timber pavilion that was actually built with local timber grown in Spain, in the north of Spain, was much more, or had a lower climate impact, let's put it that way, than building the pavilion as it was designed by Mies van der Rohe and also rebuilt in 1986. But this was not the whole thing. Of course, what do we do with this data? We need to communicate it, because in the end, we need to create this outreach and make other people aware of this. So we collaborated with an agency called Bestiario, who did this lovely data visualization application where people could understand these numbers in a more graspable way. But we also designed these material tags that we call them, in a way similar to this kind of nutrition tags that you find in the food, trying to make the invisible visible. And we very subtly pasted them on every element and a building component that was analyzed, so people could just lean towards it and understand the climate impact behind the material that they were looking at. But not only this, it was also kind of an excuse to launch what we call the Barcelona Protocol, which is a localized vision of our towards the re-entanglement, a charter for the city and the earth. I think you can find one of the copies of this, our manifesto, on the table. And we launched this as a localized vision for achieving a regenerative built environment. Then the second project is compressed earth blocks, because not everything is timber. And in this case, we work locally, or we address the region of Berlin-Brandenburg. Two of our researchers, they had a previous life experience working with clay in West Africa. And while they are German, but they were at some point in life based there. And when they were back in Germany doing their master thesis, they thought, okay, what about this, knowledge transfer? Why don't we bring what we have learned there here? And this was kind of very well paired with the DIN standard that was recently adjusted, actually. So they said, okay, let's do this, but let's make it a bit different. Let's not take virgin material, but rather tap into waste streams to really see the city as a resource. So they did that. They started with 11 different different points, and they tried excavation material, then material for demolition, from old, 100-year-old houses that were built in clay back in the days, and then they were demolished, and also from clay as a byproduct from sand mines. After testing, they created this geological framework to first kind of locate where these sites could be found. They conducted these soil surveys that I mentioned before. And then they started to do this sampling from the 11 different sites. So they kind of follow all the DIN protocols, or the protocols established on the DIN. And they found the optimal grain distribution. And through doing this process, they kind of chose the kind of winning soil sample, let's say. And they started the practical implementation and of creating these compressed bricks. They conducted all this evaluation, and they came up with some practical implementation ideas. And they managed to license this brick as a load bearing. But then the next steps, of course, are going into the value chain that we call the value chain, because at the moment, as Jason Moore mentions it, we are relying on cheap nature and cheap energy and cheap labor. And then we need to move towards a more circular and transformative holistic view. They quantified also the amount of excavation material that they could have. And of course, diversify into also mortar, as it was mentioned before, to make it fully circular. There is the demonstration pavilion, also a communication effort that will be published at the end of this year. And they are currently a nominated project by the Bundespreis Ecodesign. Then comes the fellowship program, because we also want to have a more global impact, where a collaboration between Experimental and Bauhaus Earth, with a jury that is looking into an open call, yearly launched, looking at people, potential designers, architects who apply with a project, because this is a project-based fellowship. We're looking for kind of a very close collaboration with the fellows and trying to redefine aesthetic expression, but also promoting sustainable and construction practices and bring together different actors that could help us change the way we build. And maybe you know them, Material Cultures, they were our first fellows, and I also brought the report of the wetlands. And these were some of the kind of results. There were some fragments made with regional materials from peatlands. We're currently working with Baukreisel, German collective, looking at the best case scenario for reuse of in-situ cast concrete when it is absolutely necessary to demolish a building and not before. And also with Angie and Heidi, who are from Argentina, working with waste from shells, seashells, and alginate. And last but not least, Transformation Pathways is a project that looks a bit broader, because we know that the global scenario projects that the cities will have more than 5 million inhabitants, will be definitely in the global south, and very soon. So we're looking at a project where we put together the global scale with the regional scale. So there is like this. We try to match kind of the material supply globally with the local demand. We have 4 regions. The first one is Berlin-Brandenburg, of course, but then we have Paro Timpu, Bhutan, Denpasar, Indonesia, and Cape Town, South Africa. And as I mentioned before, we're trying to understand what the regional supply in all of these regions is for different types of materials, just to understand what also, if it's possible to cater to the regional demand. Besides timber, timber has a strong focus, but we're also looking at bamboo, straw, earth, hemp. And we have kind of created this LCA comparisons of business as usual typology versus the one that is kind of proposed in each one of these regions. We have done that for all of them. The Cape Town one is still to come. But the results, of course, is that a major reduction of emissions can be achieved if changed to these materials that are proven to be locally available. But not just that, we also have kind of established transformation labs, because it is not like a simple solution to just say, oh, let's change the materials. We need to address the local actors. We need to understand the local value chains. We need to understand the local governance, besides, of course, all the constraints within the bioregion. So we have successfully founded different groups and teams working together in them, and this is an ongoing project that hopefully will have more results in a year from now. And I just want to finish with this, because this is also something that we think it's quite important. Material is heavy, knowledge is light, let it travel. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. So can we bring Guy up again?